Touch that, brighten it up a bit. Hi again, everybody. I've called this little clip "You Never Know," and that came about because my friend Russell put a post in this group yesterday, a really powerful post, and a lot of people have been coming on. A few people have been coming on and saying, that they didn't know. People that had known Russell didn't know what was going on for him or didn't know what he was going through. Russell's just a really nice guy, really honest guy. And like most people, I guess he hid a lot of the things that he was going through and how he was feeling, which again, as human beings, we're taught to do a lot of the time. And I understand that. But it made me think, if we knew what was going on in people's lives, we'd look at them in a completely different way most of the time. The people we meet and sometimes we take a dislike to, sometimes we think they're rude, but if we knew what was going on in their lives or what had happened to them in their lives, we'd look at them in a completely different way. It's one of the reasons I feel quite lucky as a therapist, because I do get to meet people and people do tell me what's going on in their lives. I see sides of people that most of the people won't see. So it's really helped me to look at people in a different light. But it's worth bearing that in mind. I know we've all heard it before, but it's worth bearing that in mind when you see somebody. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what's happened to them. They say that a lot of mental health problems are caused by abuse or childhood abuse, and you don't know what's going on in people's lives. You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So I think it's something to work on, something I work on. I slip sometimes, but we don't know what people's story is, and if we did, we'd probably feel a lot of compassion for them and a lot of empathy, and like I say, look at them in different ways. And listening to Russell's story, it seems to have triggered a lot of things for a lot of people, which is brilliant. It's what I wanted on this group, and thanks, Russell, and thanks for the people that have replied to him as well. But one of the things that came up for me when I was reading Russell's post was, I read it in a book years ago. It's by a guy called Peck, Robert Peck, I think. It's Scott Peck. And this is a long time ago, but the book was called A Road Less Travelled. And right at the start of that book, he says something about life's hard. Life is hard. And I thought, what a great way to open a book. And that really helped me, by accepting that life is hard. That's really helped me to deal with life. And I know that might sound odd to some people, but when we deny things, it doesn't make them go away. We just deny them, we put them to one side. If I can accept things, that they're the way they are, then I can work with it. It doesn't mean that I have to like it, but it means that I can start working with it. I can start working on changing things. So when I accepted that life was hard, it actually made it a bit easier, if that makes sense. So sometimes when we accept that we've got problems, we can work on it. Sometimes I'm working with people and they've obviously got drink problems, and I'll say it to them, do you think you've got a drink problem? No. But when they accept, actually, I might have a drink problem, then they can start working on it. So, that came out of Russell's post for me as well. And also, Lee replied to Russell's post, and Lee was saying about how much when he lost his dad, how much it affected him, but he got on with life and he buried it. And I think so many people do that in lots of different ways. And, when I read Lee's reply to Russell, that made me think of probably going back 15 years ago. One of my first ever counselling clients was an elderly woman. She was in her 60s and she came to see me. I can't remember what her actual presenting problem was. I think it might have been depression or anxiety. She'd been really happy up until this point in her mid-60s in her life. She'd brought up children, grandchildren. She was in a relationship. She was really happy, and all of a sudden she started to feel depressed or anxious, whatever it was at the time. I can't remember, maybe both. But when we started talking, we ended up going all the way back to her childhood, and she was about 5 years old. So this woman's in her 60s, and she's talking about an event that happened when she was 5 years old. And it was her mum died suddenly, and she wasn't allowed to see her mum. Her dad remarried really quickly, so she had a stepmom who wasn't that nice. She was never allowed to talk about her mum. She just had to get on with her life, and she buried it. She didn't go through the grieving process. She buried it, and it wasn't until maybe 60 years later, that she started to grieve for her mum, and she started to feel depressed. because you haven't gone through this whole process. So for me, you know, the subconscious mind is really, really powerful. We bury things there, but every now and again they bubble up and they come into our conscious mind, and that's one of the things that can cause depression, anxiety, you know, all of these different sort of mental health problems. So it's really important. And one of the things we looked at there, one of part of the grieving process, there's different processes on this, different models. You know, there's one of the ones that I like, they talk about anger. These are the processes that people go through, and they all overlap. They're all mixed up. So you've got anger, denial, maybe bartering. Some people will barter with God. If you let this person live, I'll do this, I'll do that. But the final two stages that I like are, again, acceptance. So, you know, at some point we accept that the person's gone. This also happens in relationships as well. I was working with a guy recently whose relationship ended after 10 years. He found out that his wife was having an affair. The guy's devastated. His relationship's ended. And I was explaining this process to him as well. You know, the stages that people go through whenever there's a loss. And the final two stages, like I say, are acceptance. So acceptance is coming up here again and again and again. You know, so acceptance is a massive area. Self-acceptance, all types of acceptance. But the final stage is adapting to life without that person. So it's not that you forget the person. You might remember and think about that person every single day, but you move on. We move on, but you've gone through the process. And I think that's what happens in life a lot of times, that people just bury this stuff. We don't look at it. So one of the things that I like about this page is people are coming out and they're talking about their stuff. Get it out into the open, get it out into the light, and then we can pick it to pieces and we can look at it and people can help each other. And another thing that's coming up for me here as well is positive thinking. You know, I think positive thinking is really, really important, and I don't want to knock it, but sometimes positive thinking's not enough. It's just not enough, you know. I've done some work recently for a charity, Neiman Pick, which is an amazing charity, you know, great people. It's a charity where people, quite often if people are diagnosed with Neiman Pick, children, if they're diagnosed before the age of 2, quite often they don't live past 4. So, you know, you'll have parents there with their children that they know are not going to live much longer, or they're going to be in wheelchairs, they're going to go through this whole process, you know, and I just sometimes think, imagine me going in and talking to these people and saying, oh, just be positive about it. These people actually normally are quite positive in how they look at their life, but I don't think they'd want someone telling them to think positively about that situation. And sometimes, you know, when people are really depressed and they're really down and people are telling them to just think positively, I get it and I understand it, and I think positive thinking is really important, but sometimes it takes more than that. Sometimes you need to dive into the crap, dive into your subconscious mind. It's probably best to do that with a bit of help, you know, a therapist or whoever. Dive into it, with somebody you can trust, pick it to pieces, and then you'll understand the processes, you'll understand why you do what you do. And it's not about marinating in that. You might never find the original cause of your problems, but you know, if you do it properly, you'll see patterns, and you'll be able to spot those patterns, and you'll be able to accept those patterns, and then you'll be able to change. So that's the message for today. Sometimes I get a bit wound up about, you know, when I hear people saying positive thinking. I get it, but sometimes it's not that easy, which sounds like a bit of a contradiction, because on here you'll often hear me talk about thoughts and how you can change your thoughts, and I understand that and I get that, and like I said, it is really important, you know, to work on our thought processes, but this subconscious stuff can bubble up, it can catch us out, you know, if we haven't really gone through these processes and examined what happened to us, then that's when it can catch us out and we can find ourselves feeling depressed and anxious and all of those other things. So that's the message today. And like I said, going back to the beginning, you know, we don't know what's going on in people's lives, and that's really important when we're out and about and we're looking at people. You know, I've had people lose their temper at me and go mad at me and be really angry, and I think this guy's going to punch me in a minute. And sometimes I've actually just felt compassion for them and being able to just walk away and feel compassion about it, and feel, because I don't know what's going on in their life, I don't know what's made them that angry. So, like I said, that's the message for today. enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you.